Hello, so today is going to be another guide. So today we're going to go over 4 costs. Previously I made a reroll guide, and a big counterpart to that is 4 costs and playing around 4 costs instead. 4 costs are generally a little bit harder to play, just because there's a lot more game that you have to play around before you actually hit like your final board, so to speak. So consider this a little bit more advanced than the previous guide. I'll probably make more guides like in terms of just like straight up beginner, straight up intermediate, straight up advanced, but that's something I want to do a little bit later. In general, just consider this guide to be like a game plan as well as like items and stuff like that on what to do with 4 costs. So once you usually consider 4 costs, a lot of times 4 costs are best when you have good econ and a strong opener. The main thing with 4 costs that's the most important is you have to be level 8 on around 4-2. Right, depending on your lobbies, like obviously like if you're in lower elos where people aren't leveling all at the same time, or they're playing a lot of rerolls, for example, where they're off tempo leveling, typically you want to level on 4-2 because there's certain intervals, for example 4-2, where it's perfectly divisible by 4 gold. So it's like a perfect interval 2 level because you can get to level 8 without having like extra spillover on the EXP bar. So it's really efficient. So those are usually like hallmark moments. It's also when you get your last augment, so you have your final idea of direction, and exactly you have like perfect information, like full direction of what your board is going to be played. So that's why people usually decide to do it on this particular level, and also aligns with the EXP really nicely. You want to level and try and build your boards around how everybody else is playing a lot of the time, right? If a lot of people are going reroll, it might be better for you to maybe consider reroll. If a lot of people are playing 4 costs, it might be better for you to play 4 costs. And the idea is that if you match when other people are spiking their boards, typically it makes the gaming experience a lot better, right? It's kind of like if you're playing poker and everybody just is always pushing all in. It's kind of not really fun for you to be like playing in a different style. You kind of have to go with the flow. And if you're playing like, if everybody's playing like value betting, and you start pushing all in, everybody's just value betting, it's like, those differences in styles sometimes might make it less enjoyable, right? Also, you have to be comfortable with playing flexibly, as well as understanding and managing resources. You should also think that it's kind of fun. Like, for example, for me, my favorite thing to do is to play 4 costs, and for a lot of TFT players, in general, like 4 cost is like considered like the crux of like flex play in a lot of cases. Specifically this patch, 4 costs last patch as well as this patch have started to become very, very strong. So as you can see, like this is just Dish Soap's and Froden's website. It gets updated every day. I just use this because it's like a nice, convenient, and pretty looking website that I can show you guys some comps really easily, right? But as you can see, there's a lot of comps where you're building around these 4 cost carries, right? Kaisa, Ashe, Syndra, and you don't see that many rerolls as much anymore. And that's just because of by way of nature and EXP changes. There are a couple that are a little bit weaker, kind of like Dryad and Duelist. You can refer to the reroll guide on my channel that I kind of already explained a lot of those and how to play around those. But you should basically become comfortable with playing 4 costs, because if you want to rank up and do really well this set, 4 costs are really important to understand. So in terms of outline of this, I'm just going to go over the different stages and examples, as well as I'm going to go over utility items at the end. I'm not sure how beginner oriented to make this, so I'm going to try and do a little mixture of both. If it's a little bit too fast, you can ask questions in the comment. Also, for those that I just want to do a quick subscriber message before we thank you for all the support. If you haven't subscribed, make sure to subscribe. We're going to have an RP giveaway at 500 subs. We just finished our previous giveaway, so make sure to subscribe if you want to be entered in that. And follow the instructions when we get close to our goal. Thank you. Alright, so now let's go to the actual guide. So, with your 4 costs, generally you need to have a little bit of a game plan for each of the stages. So we'll go through each stage. So what I'm talking about is like stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. So at the little top of your game, it kind of indicates like, it's usually indicated by like what creep round or what mob you're trying to fight. So stage 2 until Krugs. Typically what you're doing is this is where you get your first augment. You're either picking a strong augment and you're slamming items, or you're picking something that scales, or some kind of good combat for later, and you're either playing a strong board, or a weak board, right? You can play something in between, but as a general game plan, you're typically trying to either prioritize win streaking or lose streaking, because you want to prioritize your econ, right? You want to get to 10, you want to get to 20, you want to get to 30, and you get that streak gold, which helps you a lot, right? Ideally, you want to be 40 gold at Krugs, or you want to be completely win streaking, right? You don't necessarily have to be 40 gold at Strugs, but if you're using your gold efficiently and you're winning, then you're preserving a lot of HP, and that's really important, right? One of the most important things in TFT, right? If you want a TFT success 101, this boils down to anything in TFT. If you want to break it down to one simple slide, it would pretty much be this. If you want to have a successful game of TFT, you need two of these three things. You need money, so you need to either have high econ, you have to have a high board value, or you have to have high HP. Right? You have to have two of these three things for most of your game. Obviously, at the end of the game, you want to spend your money to increase your board value, and you want to use your HP to make sure your board value is really high. The idea is that you either have to have good quality units, or if you don't have good quality units, you have to have a lot of money, or if you don't have a lot of money, you have to have a lot of HP. But you have to have two of these three things. If you're not having two of these three things, you're probably not doing well in the game, right? There's some circumstances like Fortune where you're waiting for a cash out, but like other than that, that's like your main idea of success. Also, I want to say we're almost at 300 subscribers. Thank you, everybody, for subscribing to the channel. At 500 subs, like I said in the giveaway, we'll have a giveaway. All right, so I'm going to go over 5 games simultaneously through each stage. This is the way that I thought would be the best to learn it. The way that I'm doing this is I'm using my own YouTube videos. So if you need to reference the entire video on this channel, I do VOD reviews primarily, so outside of these guides, and I go through the entire game plan and the entire game, and I break down like, okay, what I do good, what I do bad, etc. That's pretty much what this channel is. So if you want to learn a bunch of TFT, I think that's the best way to learn. So here it's going to be more like a crash course. So I'm going to break it down with multiple examples of different boards, right? So in terms of 4-cost boards, there's quite a few that you can play. In a lot of cases, like some of the more popular ones are AD or AP. So one of the more popular ones is the Kaisa board. So this is basically just a 4-bruiser, 4-trick-shot Kaisa board. It's pretty flexible because you're playing around a lot of different 4-costs. The same like with rerolls, usually with 4-cost boards, you want to have a lot of 4-costs on your board because it makes it a lot more efficient when you're rolling for units and finding upgrades you can stabilize a lot better. So typically on Kaisa, the items that you're making are something like a Last Whisper, an Infinity Edge as soon as I find it, and usually a Giant Slayer, right? The thing is with items, you have to be very fluid with the items, which we'll talk about later. But typically what you're doing is you're trying to make like a utility item like Shred because it works really well with her. You're trying to pair up multiple bow and glove items and sword items because all of those work well because she's an AD carry. And it works really nicely with this comp because if you want to make Silas a dual carry, for example, then you can put all the AP units on Silas. Like you can put your extra tiers on Silas, you can put your tank items on Silas, right? You can make like your rod items on Silas. So it synergizes really well in order to like properly like utilize all of your items, right? I'm just giving general examples. I'm not saying necessarily these are the best items. This is typically what you see on Kaisa though. Another example of an AD flex comp is playing around Ashe. This is a typical Ashe board. It's a little bit confusing because it looks like there's a lot of units that aren't really like Ashe units per se. The thing is that you don't really need to play 4 Sniper if you're playing Ashe because she has enough damage anyways. So instead you build this board value just to be like a really tanky, really strong stall comp. As well as, like I said, you're playing multiple 4-costs, right? And in doing so, you're able to put those items on, like for example, if you get like tier items, you can put on Lilia. If you get rod items, you can put on Lilia. And then for Ashe, typically with Ashe, her best item is Gwinsu, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then typically you want like IE, and I think Last Whisper is also really good on Ashe, right? So similar to Kaisa, similar items because you're playing AD. And then you can put your tank items and your mana items and all your other items, your other utility items on the other units, right? In terms of an AP comp, right? So this comp, you know, if you hit Lilia and you don't hit Ashe, you can convert this into just like prioritizing playing around Lilia with the same kind of setup. Another AP comp that you can play is Syndra, right? So this is the Syndra Dryad comp. I just released a video on this yesterday, so it's pretty new, and you can check out that video for much more detail, so I won't spend too much time on it. But instead, basically this, you usually want like a blue buff, a Nashers, and I think JG. This is like the BIS when I looked up yesterday what it was. And then you could put your other items like AD items on your frontline units. This comp's a little bit more like, as you can see, there's not like a secondary AD carry that you can play, but just as a rough guide. And then in terms of like a melee comp, this one's kind of old, so I'm not going to go over it that much, but you have like the Heavenly Cane comp, which we'll also talk about. Typically, you're making like a Bloodthirster. Actually, it's not Bloodthirster, actually. I think it's usually Hodge. Hodge is better. You make Hodge this and like a Giant Slayer. You just want Cane to do a lot of damage. Hodge gives him starting mana because you want the Cane to cast as fast as possible. And then you can put your extra AP items on Morgana. And utility, usually you put like... We'll talk about items a little bit later. That's why I'm kind of going through it fast. Anyways, now let's break over. So from our guide, we'll go back. So our 4-cost game plan. So for our Kaisa game, right? This will be a little bit confusing. We'll go through each of them, but I'll explain it as we go through each. So Kaisa, if we go to my augment selection, basically it's a silver one. I just pick unified. It's a strong combat. As you can see, my board isn't necessarily the strongest, so I'm leaning more towards just lose streaking this stage and not necessarily like doing anything crazy. As you can see, I level, but if you look very specifically right here, you'll see that I'm making 10 gold, right? It's very essential that you make 10 gold because you want to make 10, make 20, make 30, make 40, make 50. You need to prioritize Econ Stage 2. That's probably the most important thing. Whether you win streak or lose streak, if you're broke, you will not have enough money to go to level 8 on 4-2. Especially Stage 2. It's probably the most important is playing around Stage 2 when you're playing 4-cost carries, right? If we look, this is the Ashe game. So, oops, I should mute it up. So in my Ashe game, I have a very, very strong opener because basically I took an artifact anvil, I hit diamond hands, I am fairly rich, right? And I have a good item holder for the time being, right? A lot of playing around 4 costs, especially in the early stages like stage 2 and stage 3, you need some unit that you're okay with selling, right? Some unit that you're okay with selling that can hold the items for later game, right? So for example, in this case, Darius is a really good item holder because if I'm playing towards Ashe or playing towards somebody else, I'm probably not going to keep a Darius on my board, but it's very strong. Aphelios, I might end up playing Aphelios, like maybe I can reroll Aphelios so it's fine to put the item on him, but he's a good item holder until I hit an Ashe or even a Kaisa, right? So that's an example of something that, that's an example of what you would need to do early stage, especially if you're playing strong, right? Sorry about the extra writing. These are obviously my VOD reviews. This is a Kayn game. So in this Kayn game, I kind of go towards playing... Oh, sorry, this is the Syndra game. Let me go to the Kayn game. So the Kayn game, I end up prioritizing towards a melee 4-cost. Sorry that's a little bit confusing right now, but we'll go through it like step by step along the way. So in stage 2, here I'm playing a very strong opener. Why? Because I took an item, which is Edge of Night. That is a Kayn item. If you look at my bench, I do have good melee carry items. You see I'm doing the same thing because I've already VOD reviewed this game. And I take my most upgraded unit, which is Rek'Sai, right? Rek'Sai isn't going to be my carry the whole game, but he's a good item holder because it's an upgrade, or sorry, she's a good item holder because she's upgraded already. And I just put the triple item on her. And yeah, it's perfect, right? So that's a very strong opener, and I'm going to try and streak to stage 3. And then this is the Syndra game, right? So this Syndra game, as you can see, I prioritize mostly Econ. I take an Augment, Pick of the Litter, which gives me 2 3-costs. And that allows me to full Econ, because if I sell all of these, I can make 20 gold, right? And you'll see me do it right now. Boom, boom, sell, 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 and one more, sell. So I'm making 20 gold, so I'm going to be extremely rich, right? If you're making 20, you'll already make 30, you'll already make 40, right? So I'm prioritizing not necessarily win streaking here, but prioritizing Econ, right? And then if we go through one more example, I'll probably cut the examples a little bit later, but I just wanted at the beginning to... go through a couple at least, right? If we go through this Kaisa example here, I wanted to really go over the openers because the openers are the most important. Here's an example of another way you can play around 4 costs, right? Sometimes there's like the difference between playing wide and playing like playing narrow, right? In this case, I'm playing towards Lucky Ricochet. Right, we can see the augment choice like somewhere around here, right? And the idea is that Lucky Ricochet means that I'm going to be playing towards Trick Shot almost assuredly, right? Because it's a Trick Shot augment. Trick Shot is Kaisa carry. So I can't really flex. I'm playing very narrow. It's like I have to hit a Kaisa later. So it's a lot more of a risky strategy, but it's a very powerful augment. And that's like the choice, right? A lot of the other augments I took are either generic, but if you take one that's more focused, then you have to be prepared that it might be a little bit more difficult to hit. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But that's essentially just going over the openers. And now I'll just show, now we'll just focus on maybe like 1 or 2 games. I just want to show a lot of games for the beginning, and then we'll narrow it down to just like maybe just 2 or 3 games, right? But you can check out all of these videos and you can see those particular comps, as well as like how you can play around those with your opener and having direction really early, right? That's really important. So let's go back to the rest of them. And so basically we're just going to focus on 3 games now. We're going to narrow it down, right? And we're going to focus on just 3, just so it's a little bit easier. I just want to show the openers because I think that's the most important part of playing a 4 cost, is having a game plan very early on. A lot of times you think like, oh, I'm playing 4 cost, right? 4 cost equals flex, right? The most important thing, we'll talk about it a lot more later in a little bit, but 4 cost doesn't mean you just don't make a decision, right? 4 cost means that you're playing a lot later in the game, so there's a lot more game to be played before you have your final board. But you still have to be fluid. Like, you can't just fixate on one unit. It's not like, ooh, I'm just gonna play Ashe this game, because then if you don't hit an Ashe, you're fucked, right? But at the same time, it doesn't mean like I'm gonna play anything and I will do anything. It's like, no, you have to have some sort of direction, right? And on all these games, the direction is having econ, and then on stage 3 we'll solidify that decision and we'll pick maybe 1 to 2 comps to pick, and we'll hold both of those options and then we'll play towards it, right? Anyways, so this is a Kaisa flex game. So in terms of Kaisa, at the end of the stage we'll show Krugs now, right? So Krugs on this Kaisa game is right here, right? So if we look at my game, obviously I didn't necessarily win streak, I didn't necessarily lose streak, but I did prioritize my econ, and I'm pretty much 40 gold at Krugs, right? That's the most important thing, is to be around 40 gold at Krugs, because then you'll finish Krugs and you'll be 50 gold and you'll be making max econ on stage 3, which is really important. So as we can see here, I'm just playing like a generic sniper setup, right? So I'm kind of leaning heavily towards Ashe. I'm holding a lot of ghostly units because I could play the ghostly reroll as an out, right? Sometimes if you like things go really bad and you end up really broke, you might just commit to like a reroll instead. But as you can see here, the game drops me a Kaisa, so that's really good for me, and I might end up just playing towards this Kaisa as well as this Silas, right? So now I have a little bit of direction by nature of the game giving it to me, right? In this Ashe game, I wish there was a way to like show it a little bit better on stream, but I apologize if it does get confusing. But we're just going to focus on 3 of them. We're going to focus on Kaisa, Ashe, and Syndra, basically, right? So this Ashe game, this is a game where I was very rich, right? This is the game where I slammed items on Aphelios. I'm 40 gold, right? 5 streaking, Giga rich. I already have some utility items. I slammed Ashe items because I had them and I'm trying to streak, right? So now I'm not playing as wide. This is what I was saying. I'm playing very narrow because Guinsoo isn't that good on Kaisa. IE is good on both of them, so I would always recommend slamming IE first. But in this case, I'm just generally playing towards Kaisa. And then in the Syndra game, I think the Syndra game, I kind of won streak and lost streaked. But I have a similar setup. As you can see, I'm just playing towards this Aphelios. And once again, we're very rich. 50 gold on Krugs. The most important thing, right? In all of these games, you cannot guarantee yourself win streaking because somebody can high roll. You can't guarantee yourself lose streaking because somebody might be fortune. What you do have to guarantee is that you at least have the money, right? You have to have the money. You gotta have 50 gold, right? That's the most important thing on stage 2. So that's the overview of stage 2, right? So just to reiterate, your game plan for stage 2 is Krugs. So when you're going towards Krugs, you're slamming items. If they're strong, you're picking a strong augment. And then you're playing either your strongest board or your weakest board, right? There's some games I played a weak board. I showed you all my openers. Some of them were weak, some of them were strong. And then you're picking an augment that's either going to give you a lot of direction, and then you play really risky, right? So you either pick a risky augment for direction, right? So risky is like, you know, a spat or a like trick shot, like lucky ricochet, right? For example, these are augments that are like really, they give you a lot of direction, but it forces you to play one particular unit, which makes it really difficult because if you miss that unit, you might go 8th, right? So, or you take generic combat. You can also take gold augments. Basically, like when you're playing 4 cost, you can kind of build around your augment. It's a lot about mitigating like your risk, right? Then you want to prioritize econ, right? That's the most important thing stage 2 if you're playing 4 cost. Prioritize econ, and you ideally want to be 40 gold at Krugs or be win streaking, right? If you spend that gold, remember what we talked about, right? Remember what we talked about? You need 2 out of 3. If you spend the money on board value and you have a lot of HP because you're win streaking, then it might be okay. You might be able to make it work if you don't have the resources, because you'll be able to rebuild these later, right? So those are the things that are really important. Now, stage 3. Stage 3 is wolves, right? So for wolves, what you're trying to do is you pretty much always have to slam items, right? The biggest distinction, if you are in gold elo or lower and you're watching this, I'm not trying to call you out, but I'm saying like one of the biggest indicators if you're stuck in like gold elo and below. A lot of people say this, and I'm not just making this up. This is like the joke that a lot of people say, is that like you look at their bench and they have a bunch of components, right? Like you look at their bench and there's like, and it's like this, right? It's just like all the components and no items are slammed, right? And that's fine, right? I don't mean it as an insult, right? I mean it genuinely. Like, I was there, you know, I started in bronze like everybody else out the womb. We all started in bronze, we all made it to silver, then we made it to gold, and then we went past that, right? When you start out, a lot of times you get confused about what items to make. You don't know exactly what to slam. You don't know, like, oh, I want to hold this item for this item, I want to hold this item for this item. A lot of times, like, especially when you're starting out, you're playing like a guide, right? Like, you're looking at this website and you're like, okay, I need adaptive helm this because I'm playing Syndra. And then you don't have an adaptive helm, you don't have a Rabadon's because you didn't get them off of Krugs. And it's like, well, what do I slam? I don't know what to make. I don't want to make this item because I need this item here, and I don't want to make this item because I need this component here. And then you make nothing, and then you lose all your health, and then you lose the game, right? As soon as stage 3 starts, your bench should be almost empty. You should hold on to certain items, which we'll talk about later, that, you know, for utility, and like, you know, it's okay if you don't slam everything, right? Maybe you want to wait till 3-2 and see your augment choice and then slam items, right? But you should always have majority of your components slammed. If you're not slamming your components, it means that the comp that you are playing does not match the items that you got, which means you have to change something, right? And you can't change the items, right? You can sell your units, you can buy different units, right? But you can't sell your fucking components. So that's the problem, right? If you have components, like let's say you're playing towards Ashe and all of a sudden you get a bunch of rods, it's like, okay, guess what? You're not playing Ashe anymore. The game said no, right? And sometimes God is cruel and unjust, and sometimes TFT is the same way, and that's just the way it is, right? You gotta figure something out, right? But that's the main thing. Always slam items. You have to finalize your decision, right? This is what I was talking about, right? If you're slamming items and you get items that don't work with your comp, you have to change your mind, you have to change your decision, you have to play whatever your items dictate a lot of the times as well, or you can wait to the augment and then see and then fix that out. Now, whether you won or lost, stage 3 is all about stabilizing and preserving HP. You can lose a lot of health on stage 3, right? It can send you last place, right? You have to be very careful. Sometimes you can greed and like try and get a lot of gold, especially with certain augments, but a lot of times you just want to be stable. If you're lose streaking stage 3, it's not the same as lose streaking stage 2, because stage 2 you lose streak, it doesn't matter, right? It's like, you know, late game, those fights might matter, but it's not as damaging because the damage ramps up in each of the stages, right? So you don't want to be losing by a lot in stage 3. So you have to stabilize, right? This is where sometimes things go really bad, right? If you have a lot of unit pairs and you're really strong, you might want to roll a little bit in order to like find some pairs and make sure that you're healthy enough for late game, because it's all about preserving health and econing, right? And then you want to level when possible, and when there's a strong reason to. Ideally, you're ending the stage with 50 plus gold at Krugs, level 7, right? That's like an indicator of where you should be aiming to be, right? So if we're playing this Kaisa game, again. Right, so this is stage 3 now. This is stage 3 of me. This ends up being a Kaisa game, right? I was angling towards Ashe and other units. As you can see, I just play the Silas because I'm playing my strongest board, right? I level here, right? I level early because I can become a lot stronger by playing this Silas, and I'd rather preserve HP. So this is an aggressive level, right? As you can see, there's a little bit of EXP left over here. That's because usually you want to level on 3-2 if you go level 6 or level 5 or whatever. You level on 3-2, and that's what I mean by a perfect interval. You see how it's like a 2 left over? It's because EXP you buy in sets of 4, so this number has to be divisible by 4, right? So because I wasn't divisible by 4, I have a little bit of spillover, which is a little bit inefficient because I can use that 2 gold. If I leveled up next turn, I could have used that 2 gold to roll ones, for example. Or I can use it for econ or something else, right? In terms of augment choice here, it's prismatic. Oh, this is so old. This is a really old VOD, by the way, because Twin Terror has been very much removed for like a month now. But it's just the one that I have uploaded that I had a good example of. So then I just pick, you know, strong combat, radiant refractor probably. Oh, I take buried treasures. Oh, buried treasures is fine too. I just wanted a bunch of items because I don't have, basically I have no carry items, right? So I took buried treasure because I'm like, oh, okay, I just want to like make carry items, right? Radiant refractor I wouldn't be able to use right away because I probably won't use it on any of these. But as you can see in this game, in order to preserve HP, I got dropped a bunch of cloaks. Look at my components, right? I got dropped tiers, cloaks, all sorts of shit. I just made all my frontline items, right? You can't necessarily prioritize your backline items. If you have good frontline items, or good frontline, especially early game, can be very, very strong and can stabilize you really much into late game, right? And then if we go to the end of the stage for this game, right? What is it? 1755. If we go to the end of the stage, which is around here, oops, I'll go a little bit earlier. So wolves, right? We should see me level 750 gold. If I'm not level 750 gold, something's going really wrong. Yeah, I'm level 750 gold, right? I'm level 670 gold, right? Because I was just econing. But as you can see, oh, this is 4-1. Yeah, it's fine. I'm gonna be level 750. I'm a little bit behind, right? Because this is 4-1. It's not Krugs. So I was like level 740 gold, right? So I'm a little bit behind. I have this Kaisa. I made Ashe items because I wanted to play towards Ashe this game, but instead I got dropped Kaisa, right? And that's an idea of playing flexibly. In this case, for example. We'll go over this stage 4 a little bit after. This is the Ashe game that I was playing. So this was a game where I was very strong early, right? If we look at the... oops, YouTube's having a little bit of a moment. I just take a combat augment because I want to continue to be strong, right? I go over the stats quite a bit here, so I'm going to skip over that because this is just, I'm using my own videos as a VOD review. And if we go to the end of the stage, we'll see that I almost completely won streak, but I preserved a lot of HP, right? That's the main important thing, right? Because I already am rich, right? So I'm rich, I have high HP, and now I'm at wait, this is Raptors. Hold on. I skipped too far ahead. I want to be at Wolves. 1 second. Here we go, Wolves. My apologies. We'll look at that one in a second. I looked at the wrong timestamp. So at Wolves, level 750 gold, right? This is what I was saying I should be, right? When you get to Wolves, you should be level 750 gold. Obviously, this is going to be a little bit more confusing if you're starting out. I'm skipping around a little bit in some of these games, but I kind of tried it. I did a recording before where I went through each game individually, and it didn't really fit well in the style, so instead I'm doing it like this. So anyways, this is my, as you can see, I made it to level 7. I'm 50 gold, so this is a game that's going well, and I'm just trying to play towards that. In the Syndra game, I do Krugs, right? We already saw my Krugs. I have really good Syndra items, so that's why I end up playing Syndra. I slammed a red buff early because I was thinking maybe I play towards Ashe this game. That's what I was originally thinking. But then I got dropped a bunch of rods and cloaks and all sorts of shit. So what did I do? Guess what? Uh-oh, Spaghetti-O. We're playing AD. Sorry, we're playing AP, not AD anymore, right? And that's something that happens, right? This is what I was saying about slamming items, right? Now, I don't want to slam like, I'm leaving these components on the bench because I don't want to slam an Archangels because these are very valuable, right? One of them could be a shred component, one of them could be a frontline component, and I already have backline items, so it's like there's no need for me to slam these right now, right? And because I'm getting augment right next, I might hold on to them, right? It's okay to hold a couple components on bench, but as you can see, I slammed a lot, right? I slammed my first item early as well as my other item late, right? Anyways, so now we will go back to here. So this is our stage 4, right? Hopefully you have a game plan for stage 4. You want to either finalize your decision, you want to stabilize, right? You want to make your board strong, level, put in units that help your board. You can slight roll a little bit. The main thing is that you don't want to break too much econ because you want to be level 7 with 50 gold, right? A lot of it's trial and error. You can watch in specific of each of the games on my channel if you want to, or anybody else's channel. I don't care. I'm not soliciting, right? But if you want to see, like, especially the games I'm showing in this one in full, you can just watch them, right? They're uploaded. Now, stage 4. This is the important part, right? Now, this is the part where you make your board, right? Everything up until now is like slow cooking. It's preparation. It's getting ready for this shit, right? This is where shit goes down. This is where you're either going to win the game or you're going to lose the game. It's going to be right here in these 2 rounds, right? It's going to be either 4-1 or 4-2. You're going to either have a fucking tombstone to your name or everybody else in the lobby is going to have a tombstone to their name, right? That's literally what's going to happen. There's no way around it. So what you have to do is you have to be prepared, and that's why you have to have all this preparation, right? 4-1 or 4-2, you want to be level 8 with at least 30 gold, right? Typically, everybody levels on 4-2. Why do you level on 4-2, right? It's a perfect interval, right? So remember I was talking about where you have like the extra gold left over and it's like a little bit inefficient. 4-2 isn't like that. 4-2 is one of the good ones where it's perfectly divisible by 4, so you efficiently level without having to like spend extra gold, right? Which is really good because especially here, like before, you know, leveling on perfect interval before now, it was like whatever because like, you know, technically it's bad, but at the same time, if you off-tempo level before level 8, it's not that bad because like you're still gonna end up getting to level 8, so that EXP, it's like inefficient, but it's not lost because the gold you invest in leveling, it stays there, right? So if you spend that gold earlier, so long as you're not breaking econ thresholds, it's fine, right? It's not that bad. It's inefficient, but it's not bad, right? It doesn't like it's not detrimental. Here, it's really detrimental if you don't level on 4-2 because you might be stuck on level 8 for the rest of the game. So any gold that you put in past the exact amount to get to level 8 is gold that you could be using to improve your board that could cost you placements. So here it's really important to do this on 4-2, right? The only time you do it on 4-1 is 2 times, right? 4-1, it's inefficient, right? But if you're rich, it's good. Like you do this usually if you're contested, right? Contested or strong as fuck and going 9, right? If you're planning to go 9 and you are very rich and very strong, then you can level on 4-1 because then the gold won't be that wasted because you'll eventually level to 9. Right, you'll eventually use that extra gold that you pump in to level off tempo to get to 9, so it's not that bad, right? And if you're contested, a lot of times you roll on 4-1 because you're trying to get there first, right? You're trying to get your crack at the units before the other people. Like for example, if you're playing a lobby and all of a sudden there's like 3 Ashe players, you know, that's a bad situation because you shouldn't be playing Ashe if there's 3 other Ashe players with you. But if you're like in a better spot than them, like you have more money and you're rich and you're like giga good at everything and you can level to 8 with like 30 gold on 4-1, then maybe so. I wouldn't say 30 gold is enough. I just put this because like generically 30 gold is like just enough maybe to hit. But usually you want to be level 8 with 50 gold, right? But if you're like really rich, then you can level on 4-1. Fuck it, send it, right? You roll down your gold and you buy all the 4 costs. You're rolling until you have a strong board that is stable, right? A lot of the 4 cost boards, if you want to play for first, you either have to rebuild econ, you roll if you're losing the game, or if you have unit pairs because they'll spike you. But ideally, you're stable, and you want to rebuild your econ because later in the game, you cap out your board by going 9. Right, you can go 9, get a better chance at legendaries, have more space to fit in other boards. You can make like a giga board of Doom, right? So ideally, you don't want to be stuck on level 8, right? A lot of the boards that I showed you, right? I'll go back to the tutorial boards here, right? All of these boards count the units. There's more than 8 units here, right? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? Here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Guess again, what is it? 9 units, right? Who would have thought? It's because a lot of the 4-cost boards, when they're at their strongest, is when you get some legendary units in and you fix the board up. So a lot of stage 4 isn't actually like playing this board in particular. A lot of times, like for example, I'll show you with my Syndra board, I don't find a set. So what do I play? And I don't find an Azir. So my board looks something like this. And what do I end up playing? I end up playing like a Nautilus, right? Because I just want the Warden synergy and I just have another frontline unit in place. And then you go to level 9 and then you fix your board, right? That's something that happens a lot. So if we're going through the examples now, so I'm going to show my roll down in each case. So this is 4-1. I'm level 7. I'm going to go level 8 at 4-2. I'm going to be a little bit broke. This is going to be one of those cases where I'm going to be 30 gold here, which, you know, isn't ideal, but it's not game losing. It's just not ideal, right? A lot of times when you're in those spots, you're not really playing for first, you're playing for top 4, right? So I might get stuck on 8. I might not have enough gold to go 9. It might be a little bit awkward, right? So this round I'm just sacking because I can't level 8 on 4-1, right? Because I'm not strong enough. And it's another prismatic. I think Call to Chaos. Call of Chaos. Oh, this might be a crazy game if I did Call of Chaos. What do I get? Oh, I just get a bunch of items. Yeah, I just have a bunch of frontline items. So I level 8. I'm level 8, 20 gold. It's pretty bad, but I am going to sell a bunch of units, right? So it's kind of like being 30 gold. I rolled deep. I'm already at 0. As you can see, things are not coming up good for me. I do find the Kaisa, but I'm very low. So now I'm just playing Kaisa, right? Ideally, I wanted to play Ashe with this setup because my items are a little bit better for Ashe. But we're flexible. So I'm just going to put items on this, right? Clear my items, put the items on the Kaisa. I don't even have a trick shot in. This is an example of a bad game, basically, right? Typically, when you're playing Kaisa, you want to hold a Sivir on your bench, right? I was more playing towards Ashe. There's a trick shot right here. I don't even have trick shot in. As you can see, everything is bad here. An example of a good Kaisa game is going to be uploaded tomorrow. I have that one. It's just not uploaded, so I'm just using this one because I want to show you guys a bad example, right? Sometimes things look like this. It looks situationally bad. As you can see, does my board look anything like this Kaisa board? No, it doesn't look like it at all. I have a fucking Amumu with 3 items, right? But the thing is, when you roll, you just buy the 4 costs and you fix your board later, right? What matters is just being strong to preserve HP, right? A lot of stage 4. So as you can see, Cho'Gath offers me the boon. I have so many items here. And I'm just building a board with whatever I have, right? Look at my setup. I have 4 Warden and Ink Shadow. Now, obviously, this is a very old VOD, right? This is very old. So, obviously, like, you know, I've improved as a player. Look, it says I'm in silver. This was, like, back when I was doing placements, right? So, this was, like, a month ago, right? But just to say, you know, back then, silver a month ago, when the set released, I was top 1,000, I think, right? Like, this was like the first day, the first couple hours of the set being out, right? Not top 1,000, I was top like 5,000 at this point, right? Just to give you like an example of how things are going. But anyways, I'm just showing you a roll down example, right? This is one that looks particularly bad, but as you can see, look at what happened. I won a lot of these stages, right? I won most of the fights. Why? Because I'm just playing around the units that I got. I have a lot of items, right? I have a lot of components. So my board is relatively somewhat strong. Is this going to work in today's meta? Probably not, but I'm just giving you a brief example of like, okay, I'm just going to play Kaisa instead of Ashe here and we'll see what happens. Now, in terms of better games, right? These are games that are very recent, right? This is me when I'm in Diamond, for example, right? See, these are the recent games. If we look at the We get an artifact. This is 4-1. Let's watch the roll down on 4-2, which is very important. Right? Diamond. 4-1 here. So I'm just testing my pen. Alright, so once again, here I'm going to level on 4-2. Right? Proper interval. I'm a lot richer this game than I was the last game, so we should expect to see things work out a little bit better. Last game was like a panic situation, right? Here I'm just pre-leveling. I'm pumping up some levels, selling some useless units on my bench, right? And I'm just making sure, because I just want to have less buttons to press on the next stage, right? I'm going to go 8 guaranteed next turn. And let's watch this roll down. Let's see what happens. So we have to take an item here. We have to take an augment here. I think I just end up taking blacksmith in this game, if I recall correctly. This was posted like 1 or 2 days ago. Yep, so I take an item augment because I have this Silas. So I'm like, yep, I'll just put items on the Silas. And we roll down. We have like 50 gold to roll pretty much. I'm buying everything that I see, right? I'm rolling. I'm trying to decide if I keep rolling. Am I paired? I have ashes. I have this Udyr, right? Is Udyr on the build path on your website? No. Right? Do you see an Udyr over here? No. But I don't have the other units, right? But that's fine, right? So what do? We're playing behemoths, right? We're playing flex, right? This is what playing flex means, right? If I hit a bunch of Kaisas, trust me, I would have played Kaisa if I had an option to play Kaisa, right? But in this case, I was because of the Gwynsu, I was pretty much guaranteed. Like I was trying to play Ashe, right? This is a lot better of a roll down, but as you can see, I'm fairly stable. I hit Ashe 2, right? If I didn't hit Ashe 2, I would have rolled to probably hit like Ornn or something. You have to hit something, right? One of these 4 costs has to get upgraded, right? As you can see, I'm going to be 30 gold. So I'm just prepping myself to go 9, right? This is a case where I high rolled. I have a lot of HP. I have my 4 costs. I'm going to try and go 9. Right? This is the Syndra comp. The Syndra comp is where's my roll down? I might have to go here. Right there. There we go. So this is 4-2 level 8. I should go back in time a little bit for you guys to see the roll down. Sorry, I'm skipping around in the past and in the future. So in this case, I'm Syndra paired. As you can see, I'm highlighting in my VOD review. I have a Thieves Gloves on bench. I have triple item on Syndra. And I'm trying to find a way to play around this particular board. Right? This one worked out really easy because I hit the unit early. So it gave me a lot of direction earlier. So I structured my augments. My later augment choices around playing this unit basically, right? So now let's see the roll down. I got the augment early, that's why it's not on 4-2. So I'm already level 8. As you can see, I leveled early this game because I was playing very aggressively, right? The reason I was playing aggressively was because I'm multiple way contested on this board, right? I think there's 3 other Syndra players in this board. I was rich enough to roll on 4-1. Now I'm just slightly rolling to fix up my board. There's a Nautilus here, right? This is what I was saying. Is Nautilus on the build path? No, but I'm playing 5 Faded, 3 Dryad with a Nautilus instead, right? Because an upgrade is an upgrade. And now I should be stable, right? I'm Ornn paired, Syndra paired, so I could roll for the 2 of them. But I want to make it to level 9 because I think I have a good chance of winning this game. As you can see, this is one of the people that's contesting me. They already have like all their shit. They even have a set with a Dryad emblem. But I end up winning this game anyways, right? Because what's more important than having these things is having HP as well as having board value, right? Our board values are similar. I have more HP and he has more money for sure, but he's gonna send it because he's low HP. So that's why the resources matter, right? That's this guy over here, right? Anyways, so just as a recap for stage 4 up until Raptors, what you're trying to do is you're trying to roll your gold. You're trying to pick up all the 4 costs, right? And the thing is, you want to be flexible, right? Like, for example, in a lot of these situations, like, let's say I'm playing towards Kaisa, right? I.e. Last Whisper. Let's say we're playing towards Ash, right? What is this? I.e. Last Whisper. This is going to indicate a lot of times what your items, right? Like, technically, Gwinsu is really bad on Kaisa, but it's not, like, essential on Ash either, right? So when you're prioritizing your items, you should always build items that are good on multiple units. Because then when you roll down, you have less of a chance. Like, you can hit Kaisa and just pivot and play the Kaisa board. Or you can hit Ash and pivot and play the Ash board, right? That's the idea. And then you just build any units possible, right? You saw me play Kaisa with a Nautilus. You saw me play this Syndra with a Nautilus, right? The idea is that, like, as long as you pick up all the units, the most important thing is just front line and back line, right? So anyways, then you have to decide, are you rebuilding econ, are you rolling, are you doing unit pairs, right? So, or do you have unit pairs, and are you rolling for those, right? So a lot of the times, like, you might see, like, if I'm losing the game, I'll roll, and then I'll try and cap out my board like that, right? A lot of that comes down to stage 5, right? So stage 5, you're either gonna, when you're going towards dragon, you're either gonna level to 9 to cap out your board, or you're gonna be rolling deep. Rolling deep means that you're gonna be rolling beyond certain econ thresholds. Typically, you want to stay above 30 gold always, right? Unless you're like 1 life, you want to be above 30 gold. But in this case, you might roll deep to make sure you get your placements, and you want to play around these placements, right? Roll for sure if you think you're a bot 4, and ideally you want to be 2 lives at every point, so approximately like 20 HP, right? If you're below 20 HP, you might be 1 life depending on what stage it is and how badly you lose. So you want to, like, use that gold to upgrade your board and whatnot, right? So for example, if we go through all of my games here and we kind of show, like, late game, here I'm just playing like a 2 trick shot version because I just have, like, way too much front line. This is obviously very old, so I'm basically just playing, like, towards Ink Shadow and all of these 4 costs and being as flex as possible. Right, I have a Lysandra. This was back when Lysandra was really broken. With this Ash board, we'll see that even though it starts out looking like this and it looks like a mess, when we get to late game, as you can see, I fit in the Lilia. Right, remember on the notes, we have the Lilia, we have the Azir, we have the full board now, right? Because basically I was able to use my gold to go 9 on stage 5 and then to level and to play everything else. And then with the Syndra board, likewise, we do the same thing, right? If you look at this game, it's a very long game, right? If we go to stage 5, what does my board look like after stage 5? Look, I have the Set, I have the Ornn, I have the Annie, I sold the Nautilus, right? Because a lot of it is just playing around being stable until you hit the really strong units. And if you don't hit the really strong units, at least you preserve a lot of HP. Here there was a couple really, really strong players, but I ended up winning this lobby, right? I was really happy with the performance because I spent a lot of the mid game kind of like greeting, and I also put like a lot of good units together, right? But that's like the main thing that you're trying to do, is you're trying to like build your boards, and then basically on level 5, are you either going to stay a low level, but typically you want to make it to level 9, right? Here it took me a while to make it to 9. I didn't make it 9 on stage 5. I only went 9 on stage 6, but this was generally a worse game, right? It's one that I was probably going to lose from back when I was like still learning a lot of the set mechanics and set stuff, right? I could show one more example, but it'll be uploaded tomorrow. But basically, that's like the idea, right? Typically, your goal is that you stabilize stage 4, and then you try and go level 9 to cap out your board, right? And you want to build flexible items, right? So for example, now we'll just do the last little bit of this tutorial, which is going over items, right? The most important thing is that you want to slam items early, right? You don't want to hold components, right? The other thing that's important is you're not flexing everything, right? Typically what you're doing is you're doing either AD flex or AP flex, right? So what does that mean? You're either prioritizing making carry items for an AP unit or an AD unit, right? And there are multiple options, right? So for example, if we go on the Dish Soap website and just look at general comps, right? Ash, for example, right? Look at her items. It's like Last Whisper, you can make an IE. It's not necessarily the best item, right? But sometimes it makes more sense if you want to be very flexible, right? Some of these items are shared, right? Like that's what I was saying, like i.e. Last Whisper on Kaisa, i.e. Last Whisper on Ashe, right? If you look, it's blue buff Rabadon's here, right? If you look at Syndra, you can put a blue buff if you want. Sorry, here you can put like a Morello, right? If you have like an Azir board, you can make like Shojin Rabadons, right? The fact of the matter is that you're trying to build like the same utility items on the units, as well as to flex them amongst other units, right? So for example, like I'll show you through like the stats, right? If I go Ashe 2-star and I go items and I go the best items on Ashe, for example, that are buildable, the best item is by far Gwinsu, but the second best item is Last Whisper. Shiv is just because like in that particular comp it's pretty good, and look here, IE pretty good, Runan's pretty good, Deathblade pretty good, right? If you go like Kaisa, what's her best items, right? These are some outliers, obviously. It says like Runan's, oops, sorry, 2-star. Like these are some outliers, Shiv, this, but look, Last Whisper is really good, IE really good, Deathblade really good, right? The idea is that like there's certain items you can make, like here Gwinsu is really bad on Kaisa, right? So if you're playing flexibly and you want to play either Ashe or Kaisa, for example, you wouldn't make a Gwinsu first, right? You would slam an IE or a Last Whisper first, because then you can put it on either unit. The same with something like Syndra, right? Let's say you're playing Syndra. Right? Syndra, she's really wants blue buff, right? Blue buff Nashers, right? And let's say instead you end up playing Lilia, right? You can also play 2-star Lilia. Why does it say Redemption? This is all fucked up. I need the big games. Let me filter the games. Blue buff, Archangels, Rabadons, Nashers is okay. See, they're all minus Delta. What I'm trying to say is that like you just find an option that fits well within 2 separate units, right? And the other thing is you can also flex your board really well, right? Let's say you hit Lily and you don't hit Ashe, right? What matters more to this Lilia? Does it matter that you have Sniper in and all of this shit and Invokers and stuff? It's like, you know, you can probably play you can probably drop the, like, let's say you have no Ashe items, right? You can probably drop the Ashe altogether, and you could just play like Tom Kench and some other frontline. Let's say Cho'Gath, right? You can do something like this, right? And you could play like Vertical Invoker, right? Vertical like Mythic Invoker if your Lilia is your main carry, right? And then play towards Azir late game, right? You have flexible options amongst the comps, right? A lot of times here, if you get like a Bruiser +1, you can play towards other ones. I've talked about this Kaisa comp a lot and how Xayah is really important. So make sure to check out those tutorials if you care about those things. But the main thing is that you want to be able to not flex necessarily every comp, but what you're trying to do is you're trying to pick a line or pick 1 or 2 lines, hold units for both those lines, and then play towards each of them, right? So especially in this game, this was a very early on game, but if you look at it very early on, I was holding like a lot of like these Warden, Ink Shadow, units that are good for both Kaisa, right? I didn't find a Sivir, so I didn't hold on to a Sivir, which kind of sucked, right? But I'm holding on to snipers, as well as Ink Shadow, as well as generic frontline units, and then, you know, I got dropped to Kaisa, even though my game plan was going to be Ashe, and then it worked out anyways, right? And that's like the idea, is like you have to hold components and items and figure it out along the way a lot of the time. And then here, one of the most important things is when you're not slamming items is also to consider utility items. So in terms of utility items, basically you always want to have like a little checklist of what utility items to make. So in this case, especially, it matters a lot with 4 costs because you're playing flexibly. So for example, you need an anti-heal. If you're playing AD, you want some Sundering, which is armor reduction. And if you're playing AP, you want Shred, which is magic resist reduction. So in this case, like for anti-heal, you can make a red buff, you can make a Morello, you can make a, what's it called, a Sunfire Cape. For Sundering, this what it does is it has 30% armor reduction. You either make a frontline item in the form of a, what's it called, an Even Shroud, or you make a Last Whisper. And then in terms of shred, you make a spark or a shiv, right? And it kind of depends on the units, right? Because like, let's say you don't have frontline items, right? Then you can make a shred component, right? You always need to prioritize one of each of these, right? You always need one anti-heal item and then one sunder/shred item. So when you're making your items, a lot of times you might not prioritize certain ones of these early. So you're either making these items early so you don't have to worry about it, or you hold the components and make these items. So for example, if you look here, really commonly is this, right? Really commonly is cloak, and extremely common is bow. Bow can make all three, right? So that's why these items are very, very important. So like, you know, if you're, before you slam like a Gwinsu, think to yourself, oh, should I make Gwinsu first? No, I should probably make the girl Sunder gun, the Last Whisper, because like, instead of like having a Gwinsu on Ashe, it's more important and more flexible to just make your armor reduction and make the Last Whisper. So a lot of times you have to prioritize. This is one of the main things that makes playing 4Ks difficult, is because you don't have like a cookie cutter formula, and you have to play around your items very efficiently. So you got to make sure that you're making each of these items. And I do this a lot more when I go through the VODs specifically. I won't go through them, but I want to have this in the guide as well, because I think that, like, you know, when you're slamming items, because slamming items is really important, you should always think. And in a lot of cases, especially if you're like you don't know what to make, it's always good to make a utility item, right? Making something like a red buff, it will always be good, and a Sunder gun will always be good, and a shiv or a spark, these are things that will always be good, because they provide your whole team with a utility, as well as being either a frontline or a backline item, as opposed to something like, let's say, I use the Gwinsu example a lot because it's a bow, and a bow is, as you can see, a bow appears really often. Or let's say you're making like a Warmogs, right? It might not be you might not be best to slam a Warmog, because what would you rather have? A Warmogs, which is one frontline item, or you can make like both a Morello and your choice of like you can make a Morello and like your choice of this and whatever, right? Or you can make Sunfire and Even Shroud, right? That's like the main idea behind it. So anyways, in conclusion, this was the 4Ks guide. Hopefully it was beneficial. It was so much longer. I tried to make it as short as possible. As you can see, there's so much content. Hopefully it was somewhat informative. You can watch it and kind of just like put me on 2x speed and listen to me drone on forever. But the general game plan that you want to have is you want to consider playing around multiple lines at once, or playing around 1 or 2 lines, and then you want to just like prioritize econing early, stabilizing mid game, and then late game just like rolling down your gold, hitting all of your units and everything else. Alright, that's it. Thank you for watching. If you did watch this guide, it was obviously a little bit more difficult than the reroll guide. I'll probably split up and do some in the future. I don't know when. I will do more guides in terms of like general game plans in very specific scenarios, instead of like a holistic guide that will be a little bit shorter. But hopefully this was enjoyable. If you liked it, make sure to subscribe, as well as yeah, do all that fun stuff. See you around.